We've reached day 14 of the journey. Today, we look at what happens when the harvest moves from the field into the home. Consider this. The specific answer someone else is desperately praying for might be sitting in your hands at this very moment. We often wait for a voice from heaven to comfort the broken, but God usually answers through a person who decides to open their hands. Yesterday, we watched Ruth at the table of favor, receiving more than enough grain and a seat of honor. But that favor was never meant to end at the edge of Boaz's field. At sunset, Ruth shouldered the weight of her work and began the long walk back to the city. Ruth chapter 2, verse 18 records her arrival. And she brought forth and gave to her that she had reserved after she was sufficed. Generosity turns a private meal into a shared lifeline. The grain Ruth gathered only fulfilled its potential when she chose to pass it on. Ruth walked through door with proof that their season of famine was over. She didn't set aside her leftovers for tomorrow's lunch. She immediately laid the meal in front of Naomi. This is the same Naomi who arrived in Bethlehem months ago, demanding to be called bitter, convinced that God had turned against her. But as Naomi looked at the grain and realized someone had finally noticed them, the heavy veil of her grief began to lift. The bread nourished her body, but the kindness behind it signaled the return of her hope. A lecture on faith rarely breaks a cycle of bitterness. What breaks it is the tangible arrival of someone else's shared harvest. When you receive favor, you are positioned to extend it. This isn't a call to give from a place of exhaustion or to offer what you lack. It is simply the act of releasing what has already been placed in your life. The blessing needed a carrier to complete its journey. Naomi's perspective shifted because Ruth decided to be the bridge between the field and the house. You are the assigned carrier. The favor you've received is the primary tool for someone else's rescue. Start being that carrier today. Don't wait until your own circumstances feel perfect before you open your hands. It looks like a phone call to someone who feels forgotten, or a short encouraging text to a friend in the middle of a hard week. It's a home-cooked meal dropped off at a neighbor's door, or a quiet moment spent in prayer for someone else's family. Real generosity is often just a conversation where you listen more than you speak, setting aside your own needs to hear theirs. Ruth's work in the field became Naomi's restoration because Ruth let the harvest flow. These small acts of sharing revive the people around you and steady your own heart in the process. Tomorrow, we'll see that Ruth's faithfulness wasn't a one-time decision. We'll learn how to stay steady when the season changes and the work gets long. Join me for day 15 as we study the power of staying focused.